As part of our how-to series, today we will look at how to distinguish between two types of questions you may have as you try to untangle your doubt column. I will show you how these two types of questions can be distinguished from each other, how differently they are to be dealt with in your response to them, and the big breakthroughs that come from a particular type of question. In recognizing this difference, you can start to hone your questions to be the most useful kind, while learning how to dismiss the unhelpful ones as, thankfully, irrelevant. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and we'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Now, without further ado, let's find out about the two primary types of questions that emerge in mind-body exploration and how to learn to maximize their use. You all know me pretty well by now, and as a result, you know a lot of my typical phrases. One of the things that I say quite often is to keep asking your questions if you want to get the answers. I'm not just saying that as a glib observation or as a way to duck giving you answers. It really is true that my entire 3-column system and everything I know about the mind-body experience comes from the questions that came up during my own experience in mind-body understanding and from all of your questions that I needed to think through. Obviously, you don't get an answer just from asking the question, or we wouldn't need to ask them. But it is the first step in the process, staying intellectually curious about why things happen. This is also why I say that everything I do is based on science and logic. Science is defined as the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. At base, it is about active observation and experiment. This is what a question sets in motion if it is asked with genuine curiosity and openness. Logic is defined as reason conducted or assessed according to strict principles of validity, or a particular system or codification of the principles of proof or inference. Logic, at its base, is proof through rock-solid reasoning that triumphs over counterarguments by its greater accuracy, convergence of evidence, and lack of inconsistencies or faulty assumptions. In other words, science and logic combine watching, experimenting, and principled thinking to get to the best knowledge we can get at any given time in any given subject. Questions are the heart of how we can get better. But I find that there are many times when people ask questions for very different reasons, including ones that prove to be very unhelpful in their recoveries. There are two types of mind-body questions. A, questions that are driven by a wish to know, to learn, to make gains in understanding or in symptom reduction. And B, questions that are in fact driven by doubt and fear without your knowledge. The doubt column is where we look at questions most directly. In fact, questions are one of the 4 basic categories of doubt. Uncertainty is the basic form of doubt, but exists most when a question hasn't really been fully formulated, since it means we aren't even past the stage in which we start to try to find a way to be sure of something. Confusion emerges either when our experiences don't make sense to us, in which case we're already asking the question, what the hell is going on, or when we asked the questions already with greater intention, but are getting conflicting results, or ones that seem hard to make sense of. Questions are the more direct route and the least problematic. One could say that questions are the form of doubt that is most active and ready to make progress. This is where we want to be when exploring things. Doubt in true question form is the road to relief. But here's the thing, and I get this frequently. People say to me, but I'm asking questions and I'm not getting answers. This attitude, while understandable, is actually a sign that something else is going on that is going to stand in your way of getting answers more quickly. The 4th form of doubt, fear, is what I call the emotional form of doubt, and that is the one that is active here. This one is the one that is particularly not your friend. Fear is the form of doubt that dominates and disables all others from being active. When fear has a hold on you, you won't be able to use science and logic well at all. In fact, you will become embroiled in some twisted logic that convinces you that there is no hope and no answers. Essentially, you are being taken over by particularly insidious mind-body symptoms, depression and anxiety. Which brings me to my main point in this episode. Questions that actually aren't helpful. I do say to keep asking your questions, But doubt is a tricky beast and will find any way in it can. This is why for some people they hear me say, ask questions, in quotes, and then at some point they find that they are, but it really isn't helping. Why is this? Because they aren't asking what I referred to before as A questions. They are asking B questions. As a reminder, A questions are ones that are driven by a wish to know, to learn, or make gains in understanding. B questions pose as A questions. They look and sound the same, but they come from an entirely different motivation. One way of thinking about it is that A questions, as I'm calling them, come from you, whereas B questions come from doubt. This is an incredibly important distinction because I can understand people saying a question is a question. But I am not saying to only ask certain kinds. What I am saying instead is, ask all of your questions, but learn to question even the question to get to its true nature. Note all of your questions and don't criticize any of them, but then ask yourself this. Is this question designed to get me more information, or is it really just an assertion of hopelessness and fear? If you think about it, B questions, in this light, aren't actual questions. What they are instead are weapons that doubt is using against you, in question form. Doubt isn't really asking a question. It is trying to get you to believe something. So, when you are trying to assess the usefulness of your question, first you have to determine, is this primarily a question, or is it primarily an argument in favor of fear, phrased as a question? Once you have this distinction, you can then move on to the two different pathways to take, given the question being an A question or a B question. For all B questions, the ones that are driven by the motivations of doubt preying upon your fears, there is only one action needed. Label the question as invalid for the purposes of finding out answers, and throw it out. B questions are not to be answered. They are to be exposed and dismissed. But for A questions, well, that is where we find the gold. A questions have no defensiveness to them. They are wide open explorations, which give us the greatest opportunity to learn. Here is where you get to bring all of your doubt, other than fear, because it has been brought to the doubt column to be detoxified and as a useful exploration of something that, upon gaining clarity on it, will expand your confidence and capacity to manage symptoms and emotional life. Real questions have an intention of building towards knowledge, which means they are building towards relief and power. You may not know the answers, but these questions give you a chance to really think about it all. The answer to one A question can lead to more A questions, or, just as often, to more answers. But B questions not only don't require an answer, they have no answers because they aren't even real questions. In summation, try to think about it this way. Questions come in two different forms. Genuine ones that are useful, and defensive, fear-based ones that hide as real ones. Do not be ashamed or self-critical if you find you have lots of B questions. It doesn't mean that you are doing anything wrong. This is not about judgment. It is about identifying what is actually going on and what we can do about it. Dismiss B questions for what they are. They are not questions, and they are designed to increase fear because they do not have answers. That is why they have no answers, in fact. It is by design. Weed out the B questions, and every single one you have left will now be a useful one in your quest to get better. I really hope you enjoyed this episode on distinguishing between questions that can further your understanding and ones that are meant unconsciously to be hidden roadblocks to your relief. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.